Welcome to the online lectures for information security. In the previous class, we have started the different types of threats. So within those threats, we have studied a few ones. Let's just get a quick recap. The first threat that we have studied was act of human error or failure. Now this can be any accidental mistakes that were made by the employees. Accidental mistakes done by the employee. The next threat that we studied was compromise to intellectual property. In this compromise to intellectual property, that is any ideas that were originally made by a specific organization, anyone is stealing those ideas, or that is piracy or copyright infringements. One type of threat that we studied. Then the other one that we studied was third one, deliberate act of trespass. Now in here, within this deliberate act of trespass means someone is trying to access any of your data that is not authorized for this person, any personal information that is unauthorized access. Then we studied another one, that is deliberate act of sabotage or vandalism. Now in this we've studied in sabotage and vandalism, we have studied that any person is trying to destroy your data, destroy information from the system. That is sabotage and vandalism. Another one that we studied was one, deliberate acts of information extortion. Now within information extortion, we've studied that any people that steal your information via the computer, and that information can be used for blackmail, or they might ask you to send money, or they will disclose your data. That is the data disclosure. So these were the 5 attacks that we studied within the previous class. Now we'll go to the next ones. Within this, we have studied the first 5. We'll start today with starting from the 6th one, that is the deliberate acts of theft. Now coming on to the deliberate acts of theft, now in here, illegally taking another's property is a deliberate act of theft. Now this theft, it can be physical, that is you're physically stealing some files, coming onto their office and then stealing them files of any software, or electronics or intellectual property. Intellectual property means it can be your ideas. Now in here, the value of the information suffers when it is copied, taken away without the owner's knowledge. Now in here, if suppose there's a person or a burglar, he tries to come and copies the information, or he's just trying to replicate the data or anything he does. So in here, the organization is going to suffer because it has lost its most important asset, that is data. Now this physical theft, now suppose it is a physical theft, now this physical theft can be controlled easily. Now this can be controlled via having locked doors or providing security personnel on the doors and giving authorized access, or installation of alarm systems. Now that is if any person tries to get into your organization, an alarm will tell you that a person has entered into the secure area. So this is deliberate act of theft. Now we'll move to the seventh type of theft. Now the seventh type of theft, it is deliberate software attacks. Now in here within this deliberate software attacks, when an individual or group, now there's one person or a group of person, they are designing a software attack so that they can attack a system within a particular organization or some specific system. Now they are going to create a malicious code or a malicious software. Now this malicious code or software they are going to install into the system so that they can get your information. So this type of malicious code or software, it is called as malware. Malware is your malicious code or malicious software. Now why is this designed? This is designed so that they can damage or destroy the system. Damage or destroy which system? This one, that is the target system. Now here some of the most common instances of this malicious codes are mentioned in here. The first one is macrovirus. Now what is macrovirus? This macrovirus and boot virus, they fall under the category of virus. Now we'll be studying that in detail. Now what is macrovirus and boot virus? Now this macrovirus, it is embedded in automatically executing the macro code. Now if suppose this macrovirus, it is going to get itself attached to the word processor. Now normally this macroviruses, they get attached themselves to either word processors or spreadsheets, that is your Excel files, or any database. That is, this virus will damage the files. It is going to start from this word processors, spreadsheets, or your database. The next is boot virus. Now as we have seen, the term boot virus means when your system is going to boot, that is where all your files are stored, that is your operating system where it is stored. So that file is going to be infected by a virus within the boot sector. Now within the boot, you're going to have all the operating system files and features that are going to be enabled when you turn on the system. The next is worms. Now in here, this macrovirus and boot virus, what happens is that this virus, it does not replicate itself. Now does not replicate means if suppose this particular word processor file is infected with virus. Now this is not going to replicate itself. It is going to stay there. If one person opens this word file, it is going to replicate itself. Then another person opens the file, it is going to keep on replicating itself. It does not replicate itself. Whereas this worms, they can replicate themselves. Now this remaining will be studying in detail within the next slides. Now, as we have seen, there are different types of software attacks that can occur within a particular system. That is the different attacks that can take place. Now in here, there is no foolproof method that you can prevent all of these attacks from happening. Now one of the method for preventing these attacks, you cannot completely remove them, but you can minimize those attacks, or you can take preventive measures. Now in here, for example, you can use an antivirus software that is going to recognize any virus within the file, and it is going to tell you what action needs to be taken, or you decide what action needs to be taken based upon that particular threat. So the first one is virus. Now as you've already studied, now I've given you a brief introduction. What in here we have studied macrovirus and boot virus. This macrovirus, it is going to copy itself within the macro file, that is word processor files, Excel files, or database. Boot, it is going to start from the booting sector, that is where your operating system is stored. Now this virus, it is a computer program that attaches itself. Now this term attaches, it means that it cannot replicate until and unless any person executes the file. That is, he opens the file, then only this virus is going to execute and it is going to spread. So that is, it can replicate itself via an executable program that is attached to an email. Now in here, suppose you're sending an email and the file that you've attached, now suppose you're attaching a Word file. Now this Word file is attached with this virus. So any person that has received this email, you're sending the email. Now the receiver, if the receiver opens this file and he downloads this particular Word file, his system is also going to be infected with virus. Now anytime how many people are opening this file and replicating that is how many times they are executing the file, this virus is going to replicate itself on the number of times you are replicating the file. Now when this particular virus, now if suppose this virus, as I've told, it has attached itself to this Word file. Now in here, if you do not identify there as a virus, that is by scanning an antivirus program. So in here, you've not identified the virus is sitting into your computer, then it performs whatever its creator has designed it to do. It performs what the creator has designed it to do. Now this can be like manipulate your data or completely delete the file, copy the file. Anything can be done via this virus infected file. The next is worms. Now worms, now this worms is a computer program that replicates and propagates itself without having to attach itself to the host. That is, in here it replicates on its own. It replicates on its own. It does not have to attach itself to a particular file. That is within virus, we have seen that when someone executes that file, then only the virus spreads. Whereas worm, once it has been installed within the computer or once it has taken place within the computer, then it is going to replicate itself. Now this worms, they replicate themselves. Yeah. They replicate themselves until they completely fill the available resource. Now what will be the different resources within a system? It can be the memory, it can be your hard drive space, or the network bandwidth. It is going to fully replicate itself to completely fill your memory, hard drive, or network bandwidth. Now in here, when this virus has completely replicated into your entire system, now in here it is going to cost millions of dollars to overcome that damage or loss within the productivity. Now the most infamous viruses are cont'd and Nimda. Now this cont'd worm, it infected nearly 3 lakh systems within 14 hours of time. The next one is a Trojan horse theft. Now within this Trojan horse theft, now this program disguises themselves as useful computer program or application and can install a backdoor or rootkit on a computer. Now in here, this Trojan horse, this was used now this name has come, this Trojan horse was used within the Trojan War. So what happened within this war was that within this Trojan, so this was used in a Greek war where a soldier, he left a horse, a huge wooden horse outside the country, and they left. That is, when they lost the war, they left this horse outside the countryside and they left the war. So in here, one person that belonged to this Troy, Troy, that is, this war was based on the city of Troy. So this one soldier took this horse Troy within the city Troy. So in here, this horse had multiple soldiers, or we can say multiple armies were there. So in here, when this horse was taken inside the city at night time, the soldiers came out of the horse. They opened door for the revenge, for taking revenge to them or taking down the country, the city. So all these soldiers ransacked the city and they were able to get back the city of Troy. So that this particular theft is also based upon that particular name, that is the Trojan horse. So within this, you do not have this horse or soldiers within here, but you're going to have different malicious code or malware that is going to disguise itself as useful code. Now in here, a rootkit is created. Now what is a rootkit? Now this rootkit, it is a collection of software computer programs or any malicious code, that is this malware, so that it is designed so that you can enable access into a system after an attack was launched, so that you can access back the same way as the soldiers access back into the city of Troy. So this rootkit is created after an attack and usually hides itself within the OS tools, or it is all, so it is impossible to detect. That is the readme file. That is, whenever you install a particular application or an executable rar file, you get a file that has got the instructions readme. So these files, not all, I'm not saying that all readme files are going to have this malware inside them, but a few files has got this malware within the readme files. Now once this Trojan horse theft is activated, that is, once you open the readme file, it can spy on you, it can steal your data, steal your sensitive data, or gain backdoor access. Backdoor access to the system. Now backdoor access to the system means, now if suppose only authorized person has got access to a particular system, you're going to install a backdoor so that the hacker can get access to the particular system as an authorized person. Now this person, he can delete the files, block the data, modify the data, or copy the data from your system. Now as we have seen, virus, worms. Now virus, it does not replicate itself. Worms replicate without attaching itself. Worms replicate without attaching to a particular file. Whereas Trojan horses, they cannot replicate, similar to viruses. The Trojan horse cannot replicate. Now in here, there is a diagrammatic representation. Now this Trojan horse tags, they can be activated via any email, any software that is installed within your system that you're installing with the readme files, or free games. Now when you open this file and execute, so this Trojan horse is going to activate itself. Now when the software is executed, that is when you play this game or when you install a particular file, it is going to install a backdoor. Now in this backdoor means now this hacker is going to access your system and he can steal sensitive information from your system without the person knowing that a person is accessing your system. The next is backdoor or trapdoor. Now for the backdoor attack, we've already studied in the Trojan horse. So what happens in here is it installs a backdoor component in a system. Now this backdoor system, like a particular house has got a backdoor, If you're late to your house, you're going to sneak in through the back door. The same way, the hacker is going to sneak in into the system via the back door, and he'll get access to your information within the system. The next type of threat is polymorphism. Now, as you've seen that to avoid this type of attacks, we can use antivirus software. Now, how this antivirus software is going to detect the different viruses or worms. Now, this viruses worms are detected via virus signatures. Now, every virus has also got a signature. So this antivirus program, whenever a new virus or threat is being detected anywhere, this signature will be updated within the antivirus software. So this antivirus software runs and identifies the virus signature. Now in here, when the antivirus is going to encounter the similar signature, so it is going to detect that this virus is being detected or some file has been infected, you get to know. But in here, within polymorphism, what happens is that the virus and worms that are there within your system, they are going to change their shape and size. They change the shape and size and all the characteristics of themselves. Now, why are they changing themselves? So that their signature changes. They are going to continuously change themselves so that this antivirus should not be able to detect. Antivirus will be unable to detect that the computer has got a virus or worm. Then two more programs, malware programs, are spyware and adware. Now within the spyware, the spyware program, it sends information from the infected computer to the person who has initiated this attack. That is, all your information is going to be stolen and it is going to send it to the another person. Now within the different movies, you've seen that some police department people, they are going to install a specific program into a criminals database or vice versa, so that they get to know each and everything that they're doing. That a spyware program can register each keystroke entered, that is what you're doing, even the smallest click or the button or the key that you're pressing, everything is going to be recorded, or it can also replicate and show what are each and everything that you're doing on the other person's computer. It is going to replicate actions on another person's computer so that you can see whatever is happening for the system. So in here, as each and every action is replicated, you can get access to all the sensitive information, you can get access to all the personal and professional details of that particular person. Whereas adware program, these are going to identify the user's purchasing habits. Now in here, if suppose what happens normally is you search a particular item. So when you search a particular item with an Amazon or just normal Google search, what happens every time you browse, you're going to have pop-up ads that shows you the things that you have searched. So this is a type of adware that is just going to show you pop-up advertisements whenever you're online. Then this adware can also be used to slow down the computer as it is running. Then adware sometimes displays a banner that notifies the user of its presence, that is like pop-up advertisements. This can also be infected with virus. Once you know, if suppose this pop-up advertisement, now suppose within this pop-up application, you've got the Facebook app. Now within this Facebook app, it is going to give you all the login details. So in here, if you click upon this particular ad and you log in via this particular page, now if suppose this is not the original page, this can be a replica of the page. Now within this replica, what is going to happen? Whatever details you fill in, your login details, your password, everything will be captured and your info and all of your information will be compromised. Now coming on to the challenges in software engineering. Now the few challenges are Trojan Horse programs, that use common ports such as TCP/80, UDP/53. Now these are the common ports, that is wired transmission, TCP is wire transmission, UDP is wireless transmission. Now in here, whenever you're attacking a particular system via these common ports, it becomes very difficult to detect because many people are transferring information via this TCP and UDP ports. Normally what happens is that if suppose there is any unused port, if there is an unused port, within this unused port, if any transaction take place or any packet enters, so that can be detected via unused ports, whereas for common ports it is difficult to detect. However, they prompt user to allow or disallow the users that are not aware. That is in here, if suppose you're downloading a particular application. Now this particular application is going to give you a pop-up page that is going to ask you to allow permissions. This particular program requires permission to execute itself or make changes to the system. You get pop-up windows like these. Make changes to the system. Now this file, now if suppose you click run or you click OK, then you yourself are giving permission to this particular file to install virus within your system. So in here, you are giving this allow or disallow permissions, and the user is not aware whether this file has got virus or it has not got virus. Then the next is protecting against deliberate software attacks. How you're going to protect your computer system or the organization from the different types of software attacks. Now in here, the first one is educating the user, educating your users. Now in here, many US government organizations have made some specific programs that are necessary within the private sectors of the company. Now in here, the different programs are, you're going to have email monthly updates. It is very necessary to install updates because these updates is going to fix any types of bugs within the system. It is going to fix bugs, and also if suppose there is any backdoor or loophole within the system, that is going to be removed, or you can have better encryption also. Then the next one is, as antivirus is going to identify the virus based on virus signatures, so all these virus signatures also need to be updated so that they can be scanned via the antivirus softwares. And then network protection via installing firewalls, so that unauthorized people do not get access within the system. The next is avoiding fear tactics. Now within avoiding fear tactics, you approach the user or potential customer should be promoting awareness rather than instilling fear. That is in here, you're not going to educate your user. You're going to educate your user in such a way that he does not get afraid of the different attacks, whereas he is going to identify what are the different attacks and how he is going to encounter those attacks. Now these encounter can be given by provided training to the users, training the users. Now in here, you're going to train the users upon the knowledge they have. That is, they're going to have some knowledge. You're going to add onto that particular knowledge. That is, you're not going to completely start from all the complex structures. Now if a particular person has got basic knowledge, you're going to start building upon that. The next one is forces of nature. Now within the forces of nature are acts of God, that is any natural calamity or any natural disaster is your forces of nature. Now different types of examples for these forces of nature, it can be fire, flood, earthquake, lightning, volcanic eruptions, anything. So any type of attack, any type of natural disaster is called as forces of nature. Now these threats, that is any type of natural disaster in here, this is not only going to disrupt the life of an individual, but also the storage of information, how you're transmitting the data, everything will be compromised. Now if we take the example of fire, now in place of fire, what happens? You're going to have this sprinklers within. For fire detectors, you're going to have sprinklers. So what the sprinklers is going to do? The sprinklers is going to sprinkle water all over the area. So there, if suppose you've got files that are written manually or even printed, they are going to be destroyed. In the, if suppose you're going for a flood, if suppose a flood occurs, now flood means you're going to have this, a lot of water is going to come in within the organization. It can also destroy the infrastructure, whereas fire also destroys the infrastructure. So in here, these different calamities, they not only are a threat to the life of a particular person, whereas all the data that is being stored. Now, as it is impossible to slow or impossible to avoid any of this natural disaster, the management must implement control so that they can limit the damage, and also prepare contingency plans for continued operation. That is in here, if suppose one particular area has got earthquake, so all of your backup data, if suppose you're storing it in another area, so in here you can have multiple backup areas, also multiple backup files, so that if suppose one area is being compromised, you can get backup from your different areas. And what are the different plans that you're making, so that you are going to back up all those files within the main servers, so that you can limit the damages. The next is deviation in quality of service by service providers. Now in here, when does this deviation of quality of service occurs is when you are unable to deliver the data on the expected time. Now in here, as suppose you might be making a particular software, or you need to deliver a particular hardware component or software component. You are unable to deliver the component on or before the deadline. So it is going to cause a deviation in the quality of service. That is, the next time this particular person wants a software to be built, he might not approach your organization for the development of this particular software because you are unable to meet your deadlines. So that is going to be a drop in the quality of service. Then the information system depend on many interdependent support systems. Now in here, this, that is, you are unable to meet the deadline, it can be caused by different problems because the information system is dependent upon power grids, telecom networks for communication, part suppliers, that is the different components from where you're going to get them. If these people delay for delivering the components, then it is going to delay you in developing the software. Then the service vendors, the different services that you're using, if those persons are unable to provide the services, then again it is going to affect your development of the software. So these are the different interdependent support systems. Then you've got three sets of service issues that affect the availability of information. Now in here we have seen that if suppose this is not present, or this interdependent support system goes down, then you might not be able to deliver the software within the specified deadline. Whereas you got three different service issues that is going to affect the availability of information, that is the internet services, communication, or power irregularities. Now we are living in a world where all of your data is stored online, or everything, all transactions are done online. So if suppose you are unable to access the internet, you might not be able to do the job. The entire data that is stored in here, it becomes inaccessible. If you are unable to communicate with the different vendors, again there is no, again your data That is, you do not have data to develop your application. Power irregularities. Now that is, if suppose you've got this siege in power, or the power goes down, or complete power cut off. Those are the different power irregularities. The first one is internet services issues. Now, for organizations that rely heavily on the internet and the web to support their continued operations, the threat of potential loss of internet services can lead to considerable loss in the availability of the information. Now, when an organization outsources its web services, that is, these web services, they are not built in-house. That is, this company is not building them in-house, whether they are giving it to some other organization that is outside there, or some other company, that is called as outsourcing. Now, when all of your organization different services are outsourced, so this company, that is outsourced company, this is going to be responsible for all the internet services, all the internet services, all the hardware, and the operating system software that is used to operate the website. That is, whenever you're working on softwares that are built by other company people, now it is the job of the other company people to check your internet services and all the hardware and operating system services that are used to operate a particular website. The next is communication and other services. Now, other utility services have potential impact. Now, in here, we have seen internet issues can be there, communication issues can be there, and different other services. Now, what are these other services? That if suppose the telephone network goes down, again, that is going to impact the communication between the different vendors or the end users. Water and wastewater. If suppose you do not have proper water supply, or the wastewater is not being removed out of the organization, then again it causes an issue. People will not be willing to work in that particular organization because it is going to have a impact on the entire ambience of the organization. Then trash pickups, people that are responsible for picking up trash, if again that is not there, that facility is not there, again the ambience of the organization is going to go down. Cable televisions, natural or propane gas that can be used for kitchens. Then custodial service. Now in here, the threat or loss of these services, they can lead to the inability to perform any function properly. Inability of an organization to function properly. So apart from all the technical stuff, you need to also provide with this other utilities so that the organization functions properly. The next is power irregularities. Now, within the power irregularities, the voltage levels can increase, they can decrease, or completely cease. So if suppose there's a voltage spike, now spike means momentary increase, that is for a specific time the voltage goes high. Surge in voltage means a prolonged increase, for a longer period of time the voltage goes really high. Sag is momentary low voltage. Sometimes what happens is that at homes also you may see when the voltage goes down or up, your fans, they speed down or they completely slow down. Brown out is prolonged drop. Now momentary drop means it is going to be dropped for some small amount of time, whereas prolonged time means for a huge time there is going to be drop in the voltage. Fault means momentarily loss of power. That is for some specific time the power goes and then it backs up. Blackout means complete prolonged loss. Now the electronic equipment is susceptible to fluctuations. That is all the applications, whether they are within an organization or at a home, they are susceptible to fluctuation. Now if suppose there are irregular fluctuations, they might damage the device also. So many controls need to be applied to manage this power quality. You can use stabilizers to ensure that these voltage irregularities do not affect the organization. The next is technical hardware failure or errors. Now in here, hardware failure means with the software that you have developed, in here it has got fault within the hardware of the system. Now this occurs when there is a failure or occur within the appliance or the software that is being delivered by the manufacturer. It contains flaws or it contains any errors. Now these defects can cause the system to perform outside of expected parameters. Now if suppose there is a bug within the software, there is a flaw. Now in here, if this particular software was designed to achieve one particular function, it does not perform this particular function. As there is a flaw in the software, it does not achieve this function, or it might result in irregularities within the data. Now when your data becomes irregular, it becomes unreliable. That is, you cannot trust on that particular software. Now in here, there are two types of errors in here. You can have terminal errors or intermittent errors. Now within this terminal errors, they are going to be result into a unrecoverable loss. That is, some information is completely lost and you cannot recover that information. Whereas intermittent means these are periodically occurring. That is, you cannot identify that whether this particular attack, this particular error is going to occur again or it is not going to occur. And these are not easily repeated. The next is technical software failures. Now within the previous slide we have seen hardware failures. Now any change within the hardware, it is going to result in that not completely functioning of the software or it becomes unreliable. Whereas software failures, this category of threat comes from purchasing software with unrevealed faults. That is, you have purchased the software, but these faults were not revealed. That is, this particular software had some particular fault, but that was not disclosed to the customer. It was not disclosed to the customer. Now in here, the software that are being developed, they need to follow a specific deadline. That is, some specific amount of time you need to complete the software. Then you've got some specific cost and you've got the amount of employees or engineers that are going to work on the particular software. So these are the limitations for the building of a particular application. Now in here, as you've got a limited time, you might not focus on all the different bugs that might occur. You're not exploring all the different possibilities that might occur. So in here, all the bugs are not resolved. Now sometimes what happens, if suppose you are able to resolve all the bugs also, some unique combinations of certain software and hardware, they might reveal new bugs. That is, suppose you are using some specific hardware, you're using some specific headphones, those headphones are not compatible with the software. So when sometimes these errors, they also occur due to some certain combinations. Sometimes these item errors are left out of by the programs. This can be honest mistakes or for some dishonest reason. That is, they did not want to disclose the error or they did not want to work on it. They can be honest mistakes or they can be done either for some dishonest reasons. The 12th and the last threat is technological obsolescence. Now, this obsolescence means that the software is outdated or it is no longer in use. So when your technology becomes outdated or it is not used within the day-to-day life, that is, there's some new technology has been evolved. So in here, what you need to do is whenever technology is being outdated, you need to update the technology, you need to update all the softwares. Now if suppose you're using an outdated technology or an outdated system, it is going to have different bugs, because these outdated systems, you're not going to have updates within the software to fix any bugs. So this management should be recognize the different technologies that are becoming outdated so that they can replace all of this technologies. Now you're doing this replace of technology so that you can avoid the risk of loss of data. So with this, we finish the different types of threats. Within the next class, we'll be studying the different types of attacks.